Hi guys, welcome to this CodeFilm. This CodeFilm is a continuation of the previous one, that's the storyline. Well, we said that we're going to look at the actual implementation of the inline execution and the file options. But before that, we have to do some prep work, database prep work, because we are looking at a database aspect and we're also looking at a backend aspect or client side aspect. So we want to do some database prep work by creating a new connection. We create a database and we create a table for our SNIT or social security numbers use case. So let's get right into it. But before we create our new connection, create table and database, we'll have to create some users. That's just by the way. We can actually work with the root user, but for the sake of an actual scenario, we will create two separate users. We will have two separate social security staff. One will be they can have the same. Let's do it like they all have the same roles, just for the sake of simplicity. So we're gonna, as I'm getting more engaged in the CodeFilm, I'll be explaining more of the roles and the users. So I could have gone with the root user. That's per MySQL's default options, or we can create our own defined user like how you can see already. It's for some of them. Sorry. Yeah. So first of all, let's look into the normal connection. That's the default connection, the root connection. Let's start that one and let's create our defined users, user defined users. Alright, so let me have a new clean sheet. Alright, so let's close this. Save. Alright, so first of all, we want to create two users. So we'll create users. After creating the users, we want to grant them the privileges. They grant privilege. I hope I spell privileges right. Privileges. Grant privileges to grant all privileges to the users. All privileges to users. And the reason is that we want to be able to perform as numerous CRUD, not even numerous, but we don't limit our CRUD operations. When I say CRUD operations, I mean create, read, update, delete operations. So we want to grant them all the privileges they have for performing the CRUD operations. And also, you also want to grant them all privileges to the databases. So a user may or may not be able to view a particular database based on custom or business logic, but for the sake of simplicity, we grant them all privileges. So how do you create a user? Most of the time, the SQL syntax and statements may not be something that you keep in your head, but you should be able to understand why you're using them. So for instance, you do not remember how to create users, feel free to Google and check the documentation and the online resources you have. It doesn't mean you're not really doing anything. No, not at all. It's actually a guiding force to whatever you're doing, because custom design and documentation does not affect really your ability to code. Is the idea or the ingenuity or how clever you did something. So feel free, there are a lot of online stuff, documentation, reference manuals, tutorials, how to create a users with MySQL. You can feel free to do that. So I wouldn't want to do that now. So but if I do get stuck along the line, why not? So we'll create user and we'll give the user, let's have the username. So after this, I'll show you the original syntax. So create the user. Let's call this user social stuff 1, something of that sort, or social stuff, sorry. social stuff. I think it's okay. Let me see. Some camera cases will do too. Let's put this one here. Social stuff. And we'll do it 1. So social stuff 1 or social stuff 1 yeah, and then we want to create the user for which server, and the server is the localhost server for the localhost, and it's going to be identified by what password, and this is a password we give to him, something simple. My password social1. So that's one user. We haven't yet executed the query. We'll create another user. We'll name him social stuff 2. Okay, well, then we are tying him to, or coupling him to the localhost server. It's going to be identified by my password social2. Yeah. Or perhaps we can qualify with more names. John social stuff John, something that of that sort. Social stuff John, social stuff John, and social stuff Mary. I think this will do. So we have social John, and we have social Mary. Yeah, so let's execute it. Let's pull our output display so we can see the response from the server. So it has been created successfully. Initiator has been created successfully. So if we have to perform show users, we should go to show users. Okay, how do I show my users? Wow, I might just Google that. Oh, sorry. Let's try again. Okay, I'll be back to, I'll get back to that later on. But first of all, let's grant all privileges. So grant all privileges, and I spelled privileges wrongly. Oh, it's correct. Yes, correct. Sorry. So grant all privileges to all the database and all the tables on. Grant all privileges to all the database. That's for this one. To all the tables on grant all privileges to all the database, to all the tables on. Let's just Google. So they said I think I'm quite lost with some of the syntax. So all privileges to, oh okay, yeah, to the let me just look for sample syntax to continue. So grant all privileges the database and to the username and to the localhost. So let's grant all privileges to the username. Grant all privileges to the username social stuff John. Let's hope we are doing the right thing. And he's a localhost. grant all privileges. Yeah, so grant all privileges on to this person, and also grant all privileges on to social staff member at localhost. So let's execute this. I'll execute this as well. Right, so we are done now. Let's query how this display all users in MySQL. Select user. Okay, so the syntax is select user from MySQL.user. So let's type that. Select user from MySQL.user. Okay, so you can see our users have been created. Alright, and then we can also check their permissions, the privileges they also have too. So for the sake of good remembrance, let's do that one too. So display all permissions. So let's do show grants. So show grants. So grants what? Local host. This is for the root and local host, but let's be more specific. Yeah, so show grants for Jeffrey and show grants for the other person. So show grants for social staff John, localhost. Show grants for so you realize that he can perform select, insert, and delete operations as well for John. So yeah, we've been able to grant all the privileges. Yeah, so as I said earlier, if you do get stuck, feel free to Google to remember the syntax, because some of these syntaxes and statements may not be at your fingertips, but as and when you keep practicing, it does take a little bit sloppy for this video, but kindly do bear. So that's our database prep work. We've created our users, and we want to we've created our connection as well. We've created our users. Now it's like we're creating a database and a table. So let's create our table, create our database first. So we're going to create our database. So let's minimize this. So create table. So create a database first. We have to have the database because the database will house all our tables. So create database, and the name of the database will be social security. The social security numbers database. Social security numbers. So let's confirm that our database. Let's see the response from the server. It has been created successfully. So if we do refreshes, you're supposed to see our new database, social security numbers database. Alright, I'm going to create a table for that too as well. Create table. table. So we create a table, and what do we want to have in our table? Social security numbers. The social security database should have, so let's have a draft of what we want. We should have some numbers, that's social security numbers. Social security numbers should have some first name, some last name, and hopefully gender, something very simple. So these are going to be our columns in our table. So we're going to create a table. What will be the name of the table? The name of the table will be pensioners table. So create table, pensioners table, and we're going to give an ID. We need an ID because we want to be able to uniquely identify each person. So it can also be that someone asks, can our ID be our social security number? Well, it depends on what you want to make the primary key, because what we set as our primary key is what's going to not somehow, but it's going to affect how our isolation levels we're going to set. It has a little bit of influence on that in terms of locking of rows and locking of tables. Yeah, so it does play a role. So for the sake of this CodeFilm, what we'll do is that we're going to make the ID the primary key, and we can also later on, if any locking that's okay, we can set an index on the social security number as well. But I wouldn't want to make the social security number the ID because the primary key, and the reason being is that I will want the system to automatically if I want the system to automatically generate the ID, then the social security number, then that should be the primary key. That's one option. But if I also have my own user defined way of setting my social security number, then I wouldn't need that of the primary key, unless probably I also do some code to make our primary key be generated according to some pattern, which is possible because we have auto increment and other ways of generating our primary key. So let's just go with the access way of normally creating a table. If you do have any questions, you can feel free to comment, then I can get more into it just to see which one would have been the better option. But for the sake of just re-performing our connecting to the Java and querying stuff, let's just go with what we already know. ID int, that will be the type. It's a primary key, and it's going to be auto increment. It's going to be generated automatically. Then we also have our first name, which will be of varchar, and let's give it of type 50. We have our last name, varchar 50. That's our data type. We're going to have our gender. The data type for gender you just want as depends. Do you want to type a character or not? So we can even use an enum for this. So if it's a variable, if it's a lady, you just you don't input it. The enum handles that, so you can make the data type of type enum. So let me just query that one too as well. Enum MySQL. The syntax for that is not really. It's not in mind. It's not. Or you may not want to go with enum. You may just want to go with what you already know. So creating using enum columns. Numbers enum. I think I'm going too far. Just let's do this rather. MySQL reference manual. And let's look for data types. Let's see the options available so that we just go straight into it. String data types. We have string, enum type, set type, binary type, block type, card type. For the sake of optimization, we may just go with car. So you know we are just inserting M or F. I think yeah, that one will do. So M or F. So let's go with car. Gender, car, then one character. So if that's the case, then either M or F. Then we have to have our social security number for social security. Or let's use SNIT SN number. So, yeah, something on that sort. Let's make a little bit descriptive. Sorry, going back and forth. But naming of how you name your columns does affect a lot of stuff. Because we already created a database called social security numbers. We can alter the name. So I wouldn't want to get them mixed up. So let's just go with SN number. Alright. Terms our database name will have to change later on. SN number. Then that's the type for this too. We are looking at int, something of some length, a numeric data type. So we go with integer, fixed. It depends on how we also document how we want our SNIT numbers to be generated, because SNIT numbers by default have they do have alphanumeric characters with them. So you do see some alphabet and some integers all mixed up with the SNIT number, but we wouldn't want to complicate stuff. So just an example, SNIT number. Let's look at this one. So you do see it starts with an E, or it's prefix. It begins with an E, then all the rest are integers. So we have alphanumeric. Okay, let's make our life a little bit easier. Okay, we can still go with that. There's nothing wrong with that. We can still go with that, but so we can go with that option. Either we go with a string, a numeric data type, or a string data type. Okay, so what do I do now? Let's go with a simple name, numeric data type. I'm also thinking about how to make it more practical route to use. So I wouldn't want to do anything easy, so you don't really have that feel that you want to have. So I think I'll still go with using varchar, and just for the sake of knowing that you're having a feel of alphanumeric and some level of a real life scenario. So I'll still go with varchar, and then the length of that I'll make it 10 or 11 numbers. So a character for an alphabet, the remaining 4 numbers. So our table is ready to be created, and we'll execute our query. Okay, our table has been successfully created. So if we do refresh our navigator, you do realize that our table has to be let's use that database. We use social security numbers. Come, let's execute that again. I think it has created a table, but it's nowhere to be found. So let's say okay, let's refresh this. Yeah, I think it created it in a different database because we're not using that database. So pensioners is here. We can perform a text pensioners to see more about our database, our table. So yeah, it has been created successfully. There's no default, no extras. We could have added some extras for the pattern. I think later on. Let's just keep things simple. Alright, so right now we've created our table, we've created our database, we've created our table of pensioners, and we've created our, created our users as well. So in a nutshell, we have our users. We've granted them privileges to grant all privileges to the users. We've granted each and every user a privilege. So we've been able to see that by showing the grants that each and everyone has. We've created our table. We've created our table as well. We've created our database, sorry, and we've created our table as well. Yeah, so that's the database Prepwork we are looking at. So let's confirm that our users can view our social security numbers database. So let's create a new connection and let's name this isolation tutorials. Isolation, let's just give it isolation, and the username we're going to use is going to come from the social security users we created. So that's social security Mary. Then we test the connection. So the password for Mary was my password Mary. Access denied. Please hold on. Let me confirm. Password again. My password social Mary. Sorry. So let's create a connection again. Isolation. Say social security Mary. Let's test the connection. My password social Mary. Oh, am I not getting this right? I think I'm speeding too much, so let me copy this. And let me save this as sticky notes. Okay, let's come back here, create a new connection. So the username, our username will be social staff Mary, and then the password, my password is social Mary, all at localhost. So the connection name is going to be isolation social, let me confirm again, social staff Mary, social staff Mary, test connection, and the password is my password social Mary. Let's copy that. Okay, so our user has been created successfully. Okay, so that means that it has been created successfully. So that was our test to confirm that Mary can have access to the database. So let's also log in and see if Mary can view the new database we created, and that database is the social security database. So you can actually scroll down and say, yeah, Mary can see social security numbers because we granted the privileges to all the tables in the database, but we can alter that one too as well. We can alter the privileges to, let us see only the social security number tables. That one too is also there. I wouldn't yet. Okay, no, let's just stick to what we want to do. Probably later on, if probably produce a code on that how to alter privileges. So granted all privileges, and that's what's important. We could have granted for a particular table and grant all privileges on that particular table, or we can even grant some set of operations for that particular table. As I said earlier, this is just a database prep work. Database prep work. So uh, our database is ready so that we can actually look at the dynamic app configuration that we've made mention of from the beginning of the storyline. All right, thank you so much for sticking with me. And yeah, don't worry if you have to Google for the if you do get stuck, feel free to Google. But you just have to know how to use the information or how to Google to get the information you need to work with whatever project, whatever design, whatever implementation you want to go with. So feel free to always Google. As and when you keep doing this, you definitely have the syntax at the back of your fingertips. Yeah, getting a little bit rusty here. All right, thank you so much. Stay stay tuned. Like, comment, and do share to anyone who wants to learn more about databases. Thank you.